Hey, web devs ever feel like
Yeah.
we're kind of stuck building apps in these like isolated data silos,
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
What if there was a way
Yeah.
to like break free?
Okay.
A web where like
Right.
users truly own their data
Mm-hmm.
and apps could just seamlessly talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the vision behind Solid, a project that's actually led
Yeah.
by
Right.
the web's creator, Sir Tim Berners-Lee.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive
Okay.
into a document called
Mm-hmm.
Vision of a New World
I see.
to see what Solid could mean for us as
Right.
developers.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about this document is that,
Well, what I think is so interesting about this is
yeah,
it doesn't just lay out these
Okay.
lofty ideals.
Right.
It actually gets into the practicalities of
Yeah.
how Solid could reshape the web,
I see.
particularly for app development.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little.
Sure.
What are the core principles that make Solid tick?
So one of the key principles
Mm.
is this idea of decentralized
Okay.
data storage.
Right.
Solid envisions a world where users can store their data in
Oh.
personal online data stores called pods.
Pods. Okay.
Yeah, so think of it like
Yeah.
having your own personal web server
Gotcha.
where you control the data.
I see. So
Yeah.
instead of relying on
Mm-hmm.
the big cloud providers,
Right.
users have more direct control over their data.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so how does this affect?
Well, that brings us to the second principle.
Okay,
User consent.
I see.
In the Solid world,
Aha.
apps can only access data in a user's pod
Right.
if the user grants explicit permission.
Oh, okay.
So this puts users in the driver's seat
I see.
when it comes to their data.
Okay, so no more.
Yeah, no more shadowy data grabs in the background.
That's a huge shift
Yeah, it really is.
from the current model where
right.
apps often collect data
Mm-hmm.
without users fully understanding what they're agreeing to.
Exactly, yeah.
It sounds like Solid could really empower users
I think it really could.
in terms of data privacy.
Yeah, it has that potential,
Yeah.
but it also raises
But
interesting design challenges for developers.
I see.
How do we build apps that respect user privacy
Mm-hmm.
while still providing valuable functionality?
Right.
It requires a new way of thinking about
Okay.
data access and
Yeah.
user interaction.
So I'm curious about the technical side of things.
Mhm.
How would we actually build apps?
Well, that's where the third core principle of interoperability comes in.
Okay.
Solid promotes these universal data formats and
Right.
open standards.
Right.
This ensures that different apps,
Oh.
even those built by different developers,
Mm-hmm.
can understand and work with each other's data.
So no more walled gardens.
Exactly.
Okay. So
Yeah.
data can flow freely between apps
As long as the user allows it.
so long as the user allows it.
Right.
I see the potential there.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering about the practical implications.
Okay.
Can you give me a concrete example of how this might play out?
Sure, yeah. So
Yeah.
Vision of a New World uses this example of John,
Okay.
who's at the airport,
Uh-huh.
and he's trying to find his way to his gate.
Right?
And he wishes his airline app
yeah.
could automatically share his location with Google Maps.
Okay. Yeah.
This is a
Yeah.
simple example,
Yeah.
but it illustrates the power of interoperability.
I see.
With Solid, John could just grant permission
Right.
for the two apps to communicate,
Yeah.
making his travel experience smoother.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that kind of seamless data sharing
Right.
being incredibly valuable
Mhm.
in other areas,
Mm.
like healthcare
Healthcare? Absolutely.
or finance, right?
Yeah, for
Huh.
sure.
Okay.
Think about
Uh.
a patient who wants to share their medical records
Right.
with a new doctor.
Okay.
With Solid, they could just grant access
Yeah.
to their medical data stored in their pod,
Right.
giving the doctor a complete picture
Gotcha.
of their health history
Yeah.
without the need for cumbersome paperwork
I see.
or insecure data transfers.
So instead of data being locked away in separate silos,
Right.
it becomes this interconnected web of information
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
users can control and
Mhm.
share as needed.
Right. Exactly.
But let's talk about the challenges.
Okay.
Vision of a New World
Yeah.
acknowledges
Yeah.
that Solid isn't a magic bullet.
Right. Right.
What are some of the hurdles that...
Well, one challenge
Thank-
is building these user-friendly apps
Right.
that abstract away the complexities of Solid.
Gotcha.
Users shouldn't need a PhD in computer science to manage their pod or grant app permissions.
I see.
Developers will need to create intuitive interfaces that make Solid accessible to everyone.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We need to ensure that Solid empowers users
Right.
and not overwhelms them.
Exactly, yeah.
But it also sounds like a great opportunity to innovate and create new tools
Right.
that make managing personal data easier and more secure.
It really does, yeah.
Okay, and so...
And that's why
Yeah.
Vision of a New World emphasizes this importance of
Right.
community involvement.
Okay.
Solid isn't just a technology, it's a movement towards a more equitable and decentralized web.
So it's not just about learning a new set of APIs, it's about joining a community
Yeah.
and contributing to a larger vision.
Exactly.
But let's get back to the technical details for a moment.
Sure.
The document, socially aware cloud storage,
Okay.
dives deeper into the technical nuts and bolts of Solid. Can you give us a taste of what's in there?
So, socially aware cloud storage compares the Solid approach to traditional file systems.
I see.
It highlights how Solid leverages existing web protocols,
Right.
like URIs and HTTP for data access.
Okay, so Solid isn't reinventing the wheel.
No.
It's building on the existing foundation of the web.
Exactly.
I imagine that makes it easier for developers to get on board.
I would think so, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
But what about specific technical aspects?
Well, for instance, the document delves into how Solid uses WebIDs.
WebIDs.
Okay.
Yeah, think of it as like a digital passport
Gotcha.
that users control.
Okay.
Instead of having separate logins for different websites,
Right.
users could just use their WebID to verify their identity
Okay.
across the entire Solid ecosystem.
That sounds like a game changer
It could be.
for user authentication.
Yeah,
It would be amazing to finally break free
I know, right?
from the tyranny of passwords.
Yeah.
But what about security with data spread across different pods?
Right.
How does Solid ensure that information is protected?
So, socially aware cloud storage emphasizes that Solid employs these robust security mechanisms to protect user data.
Okay.
This includes things like access control lists, encryption, and secure communication protocols.
So it's not just about decentralization. It's about decentralization with security baked in.
Exactly.
This is starting to sound like a really compelling proposition for developers.
I think so.
Okay, so...
And keep in mind that the Solid ecosystem is still evolving. New tools, specifications, best practices are merging all the time.
So there's a lot of room for experimentation and innovation.
Absolutely.
This feels like the early days of the web,
Yeah.
where anything is possible.
Right.
You know?
It's a really exciting time to be a web developer,
Yeah.
especially if you're interested in building a more equitable and user-centric web.
I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with the possibilities, let's take a step back and consider the bigger picture.
Sure.
What are the broader implications of Solid for society as a whole?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that Vision of a New World spends a considerable amount of time exploring.
Okay, so let's dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Right.
We'll explore how Solid could empower communities, foster innovation, and maybe even reshape the way we think about the internet itself.
Right.
You know?
That's a big one.
So stay tuned, because this is where things get really interesting.
It is, yeah. Yeah, so Vision of a New World paints this really interesting picture of how Solid could impact not just individuals, but also like
entire communities.
Yeah, I'm really curious to unpack that.
Okay, so let's imagine a world where community organizations like nonprofits or even local governments could use Solid to manage their data and collaborate more effectively.
So, for example, how would a...
Well, they give an example of a community group trying to organize a neighborhood cleanup.
Right.
With Solid, they could easily coordinate volunteers, track progress, and share updates, all while ensuring that everyone has access to the information they need.
And that's all without relying on some centralized platform.
Right, exactly. So it really gives communities more autonomy.
I see. That's a really powerful concept.
It is.
But one of the things that Vision of a New World talks about is this idea of a more equitable web.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
So the idea here is that Solid could help to level the playing field.
Right.
By giving individuals and smaller organizations the same tools and capabilities that are currently only available to larger entities.
Okay, because right now,
it's like
a lot of those tools and capabilities.
Yeah, a lot of them require significant resources and technical expertise.
And Solid could potentially change that.
Right, by making data management and app development more accessible and affordable for everyone.
And that could lead to
really
some pretty incredible innovation.
Absolutely, yeah. Imagine a world where anyone with a good idea could build a Solid-powered app that could benefit their community.
Without having to...
without having to jump through navigate all these hoops.
All those hoops and hurdles that are currently in place. So we've talked about the potential benefits of Solid for communities. But what about the economic impact?
So Vision of a New World acknowledges that Solid isn't about chasing economic gains.
Right.
The primary focus is on empowering people.
Gotcha.
But they also argue that by fostering innovation and collaboration, Solid could indirectly lead to economic benefits.
Okay, so for example, how could it?
Well, think about all the time and resources that businesses currently spend on managing data silos and integrating different systems.
Right.
With Solid, a lot of that friction could be eliminated, leading to increased productivity and efficiency.
So we could see cost savings.
Exactly.
And potentially new business opportunities.
Right. They even suggest that Solid could lead to the emergence of new economic models.
Okay. So what kind of models are we talking about?
Well, they talk about the possibility of data cooperatives, where users could pool their data together and collectively benefit from its use.
And that would give individuals more leverage in the data economy.
Exactly. So instead of just being passive consumers of data, they could become active participants.
So it's not just about owning your data.
Right.
It's about having a say in how it's used.
Exactly.
Now that's a powerful idea.
It is.
But, you know, it's easy to get caught up in all the potential benefits of Solid. But there are also challenges.
Right, there are.
And risks to consider, right?
Yeah, for sure. So Vision of a New World doesn't shy away from those.
Okay, well...
They acknowledge that building a decentralized web won't be easy.
Right, so what are some of the potential pitfalls?
Well, one concern is the potential for fragmentation.
Okay.
With data spread across millions of individual pods, there's a risk that the web could become...
more siloed and difficult to navigate.
Which would kind of defeat the purpose of a more interconnected web.
Exactly. So finding ways to ensure interoperability and data portability will be crucial.
I see. And what about security?
So security is obviously a major concern with any decentralized system.
Okay.
Vision of a New World emphasizes the need for robust security measures to protect user data.
And I imagine that will be an ongoing challenge.
It will.
As the Solid ecosystem evolves.
Right. And another potential challenge is governance.
I see.
With no central authority controlling the Solid web.
Right.
It's important to establish clear mechanisms for decision-making and dispute resolution.
So it sounds like Solid raises some really fundamental questions.
It really does.
About how we govern... the internet.
Exactly, and how we balance individual freedom.
With collective responsibility.
So it's not just a technical challenge.
Right.
It's a social and political one as well.
It really is.
I'm already starting to see that this is a much bigger conversation than just technology.
It is, and that's what makes it so fascinating. It really does. Yeah, it feels like Solid could really flip the script on how we think about the web.
Okay, so Vision of a New World dives into this idea of a more socially aware web, right?
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
So it means moving away from a web that's dominated by these giant platforms and toward a web that empowers individuals and communities.
Okay, I'm following you.
Yeah.
But can you give me a concrete example?
Sure.
How could Solid change the way a community operates?
Okay, so imagine a local farmer's market.
Okay.
Using a Solid-powered app.
Yeah.
They could manage their inventory, connect with customers, and even track sustainability metrics, all while keeping control of their data.
So instead of being beholden to some big tech platform,
exactly.
they have their own independent system.
Yeah, I like that. And think about the potential for collaboration.
Okay.
What if nearby farmers markets could easily share data and resources, creating a more resilient local food system?
Now you're talking. That kind of interoperability could really make a difference.
It could.
But let's be realistic.
Okay.
Solid is still a relatively new concept.
Right.
What are some of the challenges in getting people, especially those outside the tech world, to adopt this new way of thinking?
One of the biggest challenges, I think, is user experience.
Okay.
Solid apps need to be intuitive and easy to use, even for people who aren't tech savvy.
Right.
If managing your pod feels like rocket science, people won't bother.
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that Solid isn't just a playground for developers, but a practical solution that benefits everyone.
For sure.
So what can developers do?
Well, I think we need to focus on building apps that abstract away the complexities of Solid. Think user-friendly interfaces, clear explanations of permissions, and seamless integration with existing workflows.
So it's not just about the technology itself.
Right.
It's about designing experiences that make people feel empowered, not intimidated.
Exactly, yeah.
But what about the big tech companies? They seem pretty invested in the current model of data silos.
Right.
Do you think they'll ever embrace Solid?
It's hard to say, Vision of a New World acknowledges that getting these platforms on board will be a challenge. But as users demand more control over their data, and as regulations start catching up with the realities of data privacy, the pressure to adapt, I think, will only grow.
Right. So maybe Solid won't replace the Facebooks and Googles of the world.
Yeah.
But it could offer a viable alternative. A way for people to choose a different path.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
It is.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious about your personal take on all this. What excites you most about the potential of Solid?
You know what excites me most?
Yeah.
This possibility of a truly democratic web.
Okay.
A web where power is distributed, where communities can govern themselves, and where individuals have more control over their digital lives.
It's a compelling vision.
It is.
And it's not just theoretical.
Right.
We're already seeing real-world examples of Solid being used to empower communities, streamline healthcare, and create innovative new applications.
And that's what I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive.
Yeah.
Solid isn't just some futuristic fantasy. It's a tangible movement that's happening right now.
And developers like us have a chance to shape this new world. To build apps that are not only innovative, but also ethical and empowering.
Exactly.
So if you're a web developer who's feeling disillusioned with the current state of the web, I encourage you to explore Solid. Dive into the documentation, join the community, and start experimenting. Who knows?
For sure.
You might just build the next killer app.
You might.
That helps to usher in a new era of the web.
An era where the web truly lives up to its name. A web for everyone.
And on that inspiring note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Solid.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And to all our listeners out there, keep learning, keep building, and keep pushing for a better web.
Absolutely.
Until next